I never thought I'd be the wife who snooped through her husband's phone, but life has a way of unraveling your principles when you least expect it. My name doesn't matter. You can call me the woman who thought she had it all figured out. For 15 years, I'd built a life with my husband, Ethan, that felt like the kind of love story people write songs about. High school sweethearts, college dreamers, then partners in a cozy suburban life with 2 kids, a golden retriever, and a mortgage we could actually afford. I was the planner, the dreamer, the one who made sure every anniversary was special, every birthday unforgettable. Ethan was the steady one, quiet, reliable, the anchor to my chaos. Or so I thought. This year, I wanted to do something big. Our 15th anniversary was coming up, and I'd been secretly planning a dream vacation to Santorini. Whitewashed. Villas, turquoise waters, sunsets that could make you believe in forever. It was the kind of place Ethan had always talked about visiting, back when we were broke college kids dreaming of a future we couldn't yet touch. I'd spent months arranging everything: flights, a private villa with a cliffside view, even a sunset sail on a catamaran. The kids would stay with my parents, and for one glorious week, it would just be us, rediscovering the spark that had carried us through sleepless nights and endless diaper changes. I couldn't wait to see his face when I handed him the itinerary, all wrapped up in a sleek envelope with a handwritten note. To my forever love, let's make new memories. The plan was perfect. I'd surprise him at dinner, just the 2 of us at our favorite Italian place downtown. I'd reserved our usual corner table, the one where we'd celebrated promotions and weathered tough conversations. I could already picture his shy grin, the way his hazel eyes would crinkle when he realized what I'd done. Ethan wasn't big on grand gestures. He'd always say I was the romantic one, but I knew this would hit him right in the heart. That morning, I was buzzing with excitement, practically floating as I packed the kids' bags for their week with Grandma and Grandpa. Ethan was at work, his usual 9 to 5 at the accounting firm where he'd been climbing the ladder for years. I'd just finished folding the last of Mia's unicorn pajamas when his phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. He'd forgotten it in his rush out the door, which wasn't like him. Ethan was meticulous, the kind of guy who always had his keys, wallet, and phone in the same spot every day. I picked it up, intending to set it on his nightstand for when he got home. The screen lit up with a notification, a message from someone named Elle. Meet me tonight? Same place, 8 p.m. My stomach did a slow flip. Ethan didn't have friends he met up with at night. He was a homebody, happiest on the couch with me and the kids, watching reruns of The Office or helping Noah with his Lego sets. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen. I shouldn't look. It was probably nothing. A client, a coworker, some innocent explanation. But the name Elle didn't ring any bells. No Lauren or Liam at his office, no buddies. From his pickup basketball days with a name like that. My heart thudded as I swiped to unlock the phone. Ethan's passcode was our anniversary, 610, the same as mine. A small, trusting detail that now felt like a knife. The message thread was short but damning. A string of texts from Elle over the past 2 weeks. All vague enough to avoid suspicion but intimate enough to make my skin crawl. Missed you yesterday. Can't stop thinking about it. Thursday works. 7 at the usual spot. You make it hard to focus, you know that? Ethan's replies were brief, almost curt, but they were there. Yeah, 7's good. Soon. Don't worry, I've got this. No pet names, no outright confessions, but the subtext was a scream. I scrolled further, my hands shaking until I saw a message from a month ago. Tell me you're sure about this. Ethan's response, I'm sure. It's worth it. Worth what? My marriage? Our family? The life we'd built brick by brick? I dropped the phone like it burned, my vision blurring. The kitchen, with its cheerful yellow walls and the kids' drawings, taped to the fridge, felt like it was closing in. I'd spent months planning a dream vacation to celebrate us, and here was my husband, sneaking around with someone named Elle, making plans that didn't include me. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at the granite countertop where we'd shared countless breakfasts. Part of me wanted to call him, scream, demand answers. Another part wanted to pretend I'd never seen it, to go through with the dinner and hand him the Santorini itinerary like nothing was wrong. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe I was jumping to conclusions. But the pit in my stomach knew better. Ethan wasn't the type to forget his phone. He wasn't the type to have secret meetups. And he definitely wasn't the type to text someone they made it hard to focus. I forced myself to move. I grabbed the phone again, took screenshots of the messages, and sent them to my own phone. Evidence in case I needed it. Then I deleted the screenshots from his gallery to cover my tracks. My hands were steady now, fueled by a cold, sharp anger I didn't know I was capable of. I wasn't going to confront him yet. Not until I knew more. Not until I could look him in the eye and see if the man I loved was still there, or if he'd been replaced by a stranger. The rest of the day was a blur. I dropped the kids off at my parents' house, smiling through their excited chatter about Grandma's famous pancakes. I drove to the restaurant early, the envelope with the Santorini itinerary burning a hole in my purse. I'd go through with the dinner. I'd play the part of the loving wife, watch his every move, listen to his every word. If he was hiding something, I'd find it. If he was betraying me, I'd make him regret it. As I sat at our corner table, the candlelight flickering against the red wine I hadn't touched, I felt a strange calm settle over me. Ethan would walk through that door any minute, his familiar broad shoulders filling out his navy blazer, his smile as warm as ever. But I wasn't the same woman he'd kissed goodbye that morning. I was someone new, someone who'd seen the crack in the foundation of our perfect life and was ready to tear it apart to find the truth. The waiter approached, asking if I was ready to order. I smiled, my voice steady. Not yet. My husband's on his way. But as I said it, I couldn't shake the question clawing at the back of my mind. Who is Elle? And what does my husband want with them? With them. Ethan walked into the restaurant at 6:47 p.m., his navy blazer slightly wrinkled from a long day, his smile as familiar as the sunrise. I watched him from our corner table, my fingers tightening around the stem of my wine glass. He hadn't checked his phone yet. He couldn't know I'd seen the messages from Elle, but every step he took toward me felt like a performance, his broad shoulders and easy stride masking something I couldn't yet name. I forced a smile, my lips trembling with the effort. This was my husband, the man who'd carried me over the threshold of our first apartment, who'd cried when our daughter was born. But now, he was a stranger wearing Ethan's face. "Sorry I'm late," he said, sliding into the chair across from me. His hazel eyes crinkled, just as I'd imagined, but there was a flicker of distraction in them, like he was already somewhere else. Traffic was a nightmare. "It's fine," I said, my voice smoother than I felt. "I ordered us some bruschetta to start. You hungry?" "Starving." He reached for the water glass, his wedding ring catching the candlelight. I stared at it. A simple gold band I'd slipped onto his finger 15 years ago. Did it mean anything to him now? "How was your day?" he asked, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. "Busy," I said, keeping my tone light. "Kids are with my parents, all set for their week of spoiling. Mia's already planning a pancake empire with Mom." I paused, watching his reaction. "Left your phone at home, by the way. It's on your nightstand." His hand froze mid-sip. Just for a second, before he set the glass down. "Oh, crap. I wondered where it was. Thanks for grabbing it." His smile was quick, but I caught the tightening at the corner of his mouth. He was nervous. "Good." "No problem," I said, leaning back as the waiter set down the bruschetta. "You get any important messages today?" Work stuff? He shook his head. Too fast. Nah, just the usual. Budget reports, client emails. You know how it is. He grabbed a piece of bruschetta, biting into it like it was a shield. I let the silence stretch, my eyes locked on his. He was lying. I could feel it in the way he avoided my gaze, focusing on the food like it held the secrets of the universe. The waiter returned to take our order. Chicken parmesan for him, linguine with clams for me. Routine choices for a routine night, except nothing about this was routine. I slid the envelope with the Santorini itinerary across the table, my heart pounding. I have something for you, I said, forcing warmth into my voice. Happy early anniversary. His eyebrows shot up as he opened the envelope, pulling out the glossy itinerary. Santorini? His voice was soft, almost reverent, as he scanned the details. Babe, this is… Wow. A private villa? A catamaran sail? He looked up, his eyes meeting mine, and for a moment, I saw the Ethan I'd fallen in love with. The one who'd promised me the world on a shoestring budget. This is incredible. How did you pull this off? Months of sneaking around, I said, the irony biting at me. I wanted it to be perfect. Just us, no distractions. I leaned forward, my voice dropping. You think you can get away from work for a week? No. Other commitments? His smile faltered, just a fraction, but I caught it. Yeah, I'll make it work. This is too good to pass up. He reached for my hand, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. You're amazing. You know that? I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But his touch felt like a lie, and the messages from Elle burned in my mind. Meet me tonight? Same place, 8 p.m.? It was 7:02 now. If he was meeting Elle at 8, he'd have to leave soon. I needed to keep him here, to see if he'd make an excuse. We ate? Or rather, he ate. And I pushed linguine around my plate, my appetite gone. I steered the conversation to safe topics. Noah's science fair project, the dog's latest vet visit, watching for cracks in his facade. At 7:25, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He'd picked it up from home before coming here, of course. He glanced at it under the table, his expression unreadable, then silenced it. Work? I asked, sipping my wine. Yeah, just a colleague with a question. Nothing urgent. He shoved the phone back in his pocket, but his leg was bouncing under the table now, a nervous tick I hadn't seen in years. He was itching to leave. At 7:40, he checked his watch. I hate to do this, he said, his tone apologetic. But I need to run to the office for a bit. Last-minute budget thing for a client. I'll be back by 9, tops. We can grab dessert after, keep the night going. My heart sank, but I kept my face neutral. The office? On a Friday night? I tilted, my head letting a hint of skepticism creep into my voice. Can it wait? It's a big account, he said, already standing, his chair scraping against the floor. I'll make it quick, promise. He leaned down to kiss my forehead, his lips barely grazing my skin. Love you. Save me some of that tiramisu. And then he was gone, weaving through the restaurant like a man on a mission. I sat there staring at the half-eaten bruschetta, the Santorini itinerary mocking me from the table. He was meeting Elle. I knew it in my bones, but I wasn't going to sit here and cry into my wine. I signaled the waiter for the check, my mind racing. The usual spot was close, within 20 minutes if he was rushing. I had his phone's location shared with mine, a holdover from when we'd set it up for family safety. I could track him. I could find out who Elle was and what they were doing to my marriage. I paid the bill, grabbed the itinerary, and slipped out into the cool night air. My car was parked 2 blocks away, and as I walked, I pulled up the tracking app on my phone. Ethan's dot was moving, heading toward the riverfront district, a trendy area with bars and boutique hotels. Not his office. My grip tightened on my phone as I climbed into my car, the engine roaring to life. I wasn't sure what I'd find, but I was done playing the clueless wife. Santorini could wait. The truth couldn't. The truth couldn't. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Ethan humming in the kitchen. It was a Saturday ritual, him making breakfast while I slept in, but today it felt like a performance. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the envelope from Landry still unopened on my nightstand. I'd brought it upstairs last night, telling Ethan I'd read it when I was ready. Truth was, I wasn't. Not because I didn't want answers, but because I was afraid of what they'd mean for us. I forced myself up, pulling on a sweater and padding downstairs. Ethan was at the stove, flipping pancakes, his hair still mussed, from sleep. "Morning," he said, flashing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Kids'll be bummed they're missing pancake day. You want blueberry or plain?" "Blueberry," I said, sliding onto a stool at the counter. The normalcy of it all, the sizzling pan, the stack of plates, felt surreal after last night's confrontation. "You sleep okay?" "Better than I expected," he said, pouring batter. "You?" "Fine," I lied. I'd tossed and turned, replaying his story about the firm, the irregularities, Landry's role. It was plausible, but pieces didn't fit. Why the secrecy for months? Why texts that sounded so intimate? I needed more than his word, and I wasn't waiting for him to hand it to me. After breakfast, Ethan said he had to run errands, groceries, a trip to the hardware store. "I'll be back by lunch," he promised, kissing my cheek. "We can talk more about Santorini. Pick out restaurants or something." "Sure," I said, forcing a smile. The second his car pulled out of the driveway, I grabbed my laptop and the envelope. I wasn't going to read it yet, not until I had context. Instead, I searched for Lucas Landry again, digging deeper than the cursory glance I'd given his website. Social media was a bust. His profiles were locked or non-existent, but a cached news article from 2 years ago mentioned Landry and Associates cracking a corporate fraud case for a local tech company. The article quoted Lucas, calling him relentless and discreet to a fault. No wonder Ethan chose him. I switched gears, searching the firm where Ethan worked, Harrington & Cole, a mid-sized accounting outfit with a solid reputation. Their website was polished, touting integrity and client trust, but a few buried forum posts on accounting subreddits hinted at trouble. Anonymous users mentioned high turnover, pressure to overlook creative bookkeeping, and a senior partner with a reputation for dodging audits. Nothing concrete, but enough to make Ethan's story feel less far-fetched. The envelope stared at me from the counter. I couldn't put it off forever. I tore it open, pulling out a single sheet of paper, a typed summary, no letterhead, no signature. It listed 3 client accounts at Harrington & Cole, with transaction dates and amounts. That didn't add up. Transfers to offshore accounts, shell companies with vague names. At the bottom, in Landry's tight scrawl, was a note. "Confirm with source before proceeding. Risk level, high." My stomach dropped. This wasn't just irregularities. This was potential fraud, maybe even money laundering. Ethan was in deeper than he'd let on. But who was the source? And why was Landry so cagey? I grabbed my phone, ready to call Ethan and demand the rest of the story, when a text popped up from an unknown number. "Check your mailbox. You deserve to know." My breath caught. I glanced out the window, half expecting to see someone lurking, but the street was empty. I hurried to the front door, my pulse racing, and opened the mailbox. Inside was a plain manila envelope, no address, no stamp. Someone had hand-delivered it. I tore it open, my hands shaking, and pulled out a single photograph. It was Ethan standing outside the Anchor, talking to Landry. But in the background, barely visible in the dim streetlight, was a woman. She was watching them, her face half-turned, but I recognized her instantly. Claire. My best friend since college, the one who'd been at our wedding, who'd babysat. Our kids, who'd cried with me through every miscarriage before Noah. Claire, who'd been distant lately, always too busy to meet up. A note was clipped to the photo, in the same tight scrawl as Landry's report. Ask her why she's involved. I sank to the floor, the photo trembling in my hands. Ethan's secret wasn't just about work. It wasn't just about Landry. It was about Claire, my Claire. And whatever they were hiding, it was big enough to tear my world apart. Ethan stood frozen in the kitchen doorway, his blazer still slung over his arm, his face pale as moonlight. I'd just dropped a bomb. Lucas Landry's name, the anchor, my tailing him. And the air between us crackled with the fallout. My heart pounded, but I kept my arms crossed, my gaze steady. I wasn't the one who'd been caught lying. Not yet. How did you— He stopped, running a hand through his hair, a gesture I'd seen 1,000 times when he was cornered. You followed me? To the bar? I did, I said, my voice low but firm. You said you were going to the office, Ethan. You lied. So I followed you, saw you with Landry. He's a private investigator. Care to tell me why my husband's sneaking around with a PI behind my back? He exhaled, slow and shaky, and set his blazer on the counter. The envelope I'd seen Landry give him peeked out of his pocket, and I had to fight the urge to snatch it. This isn't what you think, he said, his eyes darting to mine, then away. It's not. I'm not cheating or anything like that. Then what is it? I stepped closer, my voice rising despite my effort to stay calm. Because, from where I'm standing, it looks like you're hiding something big. You're meeting some guy in secret, lying to my face, and I'm supposed to just trust you? After those messages? His head snapped up. Messages? What messages? Don't play dumb. I pulled out my phone, the screenshots ready. Your phone was buzzing this morning. You forgot it, remember? I saw texts from L. Lucas. Landry, I'm guessing. Meet me tonight. You make it hard to focus. I'm sure it's worth it. Explain that, Ethan. Now. He stared at the screen, his jaw tightening, and for a moment, I thought he'd deny it. But then he sank into a chair, his shoulders slumping. Okay, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Okay, I'll tell you. But you're not going to like it. I already don't like it, I snapped, sitting across from him. The kitchen table a battlefield between us. Start talking. He took a deep breath, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles whitened. Landry's a PI, yeah. I hired him a couple months ago. It's about work. There's something going on at the firm. Irregularities in some client accounts. Big ones. I noticed them during an audit, but when I brought it up to my boss, he brushed it off. Told me to let it go. But I couldn't. If those accounts are being mismanaged, or worse, it could tank the firm, or land me in hot water for not reporting. I blinked, my anger faltering. This wasn't what I'd expected. So you hired a PI to— What? Dig into your own company? Exactly. He leaned forward, his eyes pleading. I needed someone outside the firm, someone discreet. Landry's been looking into the accounts, tracking where the money's going. Those messages, they're about that. He's intense, always pushing for updates, and I've been trying to keep it under wraps. I didn't want to drag you into it until I knew more. I searched his face, looking for the lie, but his expression was raw, almost desperate. Why not tell me? I asked, my voice softer now, though the hurt still bled through. We're supposed to be partners, Ethan. Why lie about the office? Why sneak around? Because I was scared, he admitted, his voice breaking. This isn't just about my job. If I'm right, people could get hurt, powerful people. I didn't want you or the kids anywhere near it. And the office lie. I panicked. I didn't know how to explain without sounding paranoid. I sat back, my mind racing. It made sense, in a twisted way. Ethan was cautious, always dotting his I's. If he'd stumbled onto something shady at work, he'd want to handle it quietly. But the envelope in his pocket, the secrecy, the way Landry's texts felt too personal, it didn't add up completely. "What's in the envelope Landry gave you?" I asked, nodding toward his blazer. He hesitated, just a beat too long, then reached for it. "It's a report. Preliminary findings. I haven't even looked at it yet." He slid it across the table, unopened. "You can read it if you want. I'm not hiding anything from you." I stared at the envelope, my fingers itching to tear it open. But something held me back. Trust, or the lack of it. If I opened it now, it'd be admitting I didn't believe him. But if I didn't, I'd spend the night wondering what he was, still keeping from me. "I'll look later," I said finally, pushing it back. "But Ethan, no more lies. If you're in trouble, we face it together. Deal?" "Deal," he said, his relief palpable. He reached for my hand, and this time I let him take it, though my grip was tentative. "I'm sorry I scared you, and Santorini. I can't believe you planned that. It's perfect. I want this, us, more than anything." His words warmed me, but they didn't erase the doubt gnawing at my gut. I smiled, nodding, but as he talked about making things right, my eyes kept drifting to the envelope. He'd given me a truth, but I wasn't sure it was the whole one. And somewhere out there, Lucas Landry knew more than I did. I needed to find out what. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Ethan humming in the kitchen. It was a Saturday ritual, him making breakfast while I slept in, but today it felt like a performance. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the envelope, from Landry still unopened on my nightstand. I'd brought it upstairs last night, telling Ethan I'd read it when I was ready. Truth was, I wasn't. Not because I didn't want answers, but because I was afraid of what they'd mean for us. I forced myself up, pulling on a sweater and padding downstairs. Ethan was at the stove, flipping pancakes, his hair still mussed, from sleep. "Morning," he said, flashing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Kids'll be bummed they're missing pancake day. You want blueberry or plain?" "Blueberry," I said, sliding onto a stool at the counter. The normalcy of it all, the sizzling pan, the stack of plates, felt surreal after last night's confrontation. "You sleep okay?" "Better than I expected," he said, pouring batter. "You?" "Fine," I lied. I'd tossed and turned, replaying his story about the firm, the irregularities, Landry's role. It was plausible, but pieces didn't fit. Why the secrecy for months? Why texts that sounded so intimate? I needed more than his word, and I wasn't waiting for him to hand it to me. After breakfast, Ethan said he had to run errands, groceries, a trip to the hardware store. "I'll be back by lunch," he promised, kissing my cheek. "We can talk more about Santorini. Pick out restaurants or something." "Sure," I said, forcing a smile. The second his car pulled out of the driveway, I grabbed my laptop and the envelope. I wasn't going to read it yet, not until I had context. Instead, I searched for Lucas Landry again, digging deeper than the cursory glance I'd given his website. Social media was a bust. His profiles were locked or non-existent, but a cached news article from 2 years ago mentioned Landry and Associates cracking a corporate fraud case for a local tech company. The article quoted Lucas, calling him relentless and discreet to a fault. No wonder Ethan chose him. I switched gears, searching the firm where Ethan worked, Harrington & Cole, a mid-sized accounting outfit with a solid reputation. Their website was polished, touting integrity and client trust, but a few buried forum posts on accounting subreddits hinted at trouble. Anonymous users mentioned high turnover, pressure to overlook creative bookkeeping, and a senior partner with a reputation for dodging audits. Nothing concrete, but enough to make Ethan's story feel less far-fetched. The envelope stared at me from the counter. I couldn't put it off forever. I tore it open, pulling out a single sheet of paper, A typed summary, no letterhead, no signature. It listed 3 client accounts at Harrington and Cole, with transaction dates and amounts. That didn't add up. Transfers to offshore accounts, shell companies with vague names. At the bottom, in Landry's tight scrawl, was a note. Confirm with source before proceeding. Risk level, high. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just irregularities. This was potential fraud, maybe even money laundering. Ethan was in deeper than he'd let on. But who was the source? And why was Landry so cagey? I grabbed my phone, ready to call Ethan and demand the rest of the story, when a text popped up from an unknown number. Check your mailbox. You deserve to know. My breath caught. I glanced out the window, half expecting to see someone lurking. But the street was empty. I hurried to the front door, my pulse racing, and opened the mailbox. Inside was a plain manila envelope, no address, no stamp. Someone had hand-delivered it. I tore it open, my hands shaking, and pulled out a single photograph. It was Ethan standing outside the Anchor, talking to Landry. But in the background, barely visible in the dim streetlight, was a woman. She was watching them, her face half-turned, but I recognized her instantly. Claire. My best friend since college, the one who'd been at our wedding, who'd babysat, our kids who'd cried with me through every miscarriage before Noah. Claire, who'd been distant lately, always too busy to meet up. A note was clipped to the photo, in the same tight scrawl as Landry's report. Ask her why she's involved. I sank to the floor, the photo trembling in my hands. Ethan's secret wasn't just about work. It wasn't just about Landry. It was about Claire, my Claire. And whatever they were hiding, it was big enough to tear my world apart. I sat on the living room floor, the photo of Claire trembling in my hands. Her face, half lit by the street lamp outside the Anchor, stared back at me, familiar yet foreign. My best friend, the woman who'd held my hand through labor, who'd laughed with me over cheap wine, was somehow tangled in Ethan's secret. The note, ask her why she's involved, burned in my mind. I needed answers, and I wasn't waiting for Ethan to come home and spin another half-truth. Claire owed me the truth. I grabbed my phone and dialed her number, my pulse thudding in my ears. It rang twice before she picked up. "Hey, stranger," she said, her voice light, like nothing was wrong. "Long time no talk. What's up?" "We need to meet," I said, my tone sharp enough to cut through her cheer. "Now, can you come to the park by my house? The one with the duck pond." A pause, then a nervous laugh. Sure. Everything okay? You sound intense." "Just be there in 20 minutes," I said, hanging up before she could ask more. I stuffed the photo and note into my purse, next to the Santorini itinerary I hadn't touched since dinner. That trip felt like a cruel joke now, a reminder of the life I'd thought I had. I slipped on sneakers, grabbed my keys, and drove to the park, the early afternoon sun doing nothing to warm the chill in my bones. The park was quiet, just a few joggers and a mom pushing a stroller. I found a bench by the pond, the water glinting under the light. Claire arrived 5 minutes later, her blonde hair pulled into a messy bun, her yoga pants and oversized sweater screaming casual. But her eyes, usually bright, were guarded as she sat beside me. "Okay, you're freaking me out," she said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "What's going on?" I didn't waste time. I pulled out the photo and slapped it on the bench between us. "Explain this. Why were you at the Anchor watching Ethan and Lucas Landry?" Her face went pale, her mouth opening in a small gasp. "Where did you get this?" "Doesn't matter. Answer the question, Claire. Why are you involved in whatever Ethan's doing? Because I know he's not just auditing accounts. He's hired a PI, he's lying to me, and now you're in a photo with them. Start talking." She stared at the photo, her hands twisting in her lap. For a moment, I thought she'd bolt. but then she sighed, her shoulders slumping. I didn't want you to find out like this, she said, her voice low. I swear I was trying to protect you. Protect me? I laughed, bitter. From what? My own husband? My best friend sneaking around behind my back? It's not like that, she said, her eyes pleading. I work for Harrington and Cole. You know that. I'm in their legal department, have been for 3 years. About 6 months ago, Ethan came to me with concerns about some client accounts. Weird transactions, money moving to places it shouldn't. He thought it was a mistake at first, but when he dug deeper, he found patterns. Offshore accounts, shell companies. He asked me to look into it quietly, off the books, because he didn't trust anyone else at the firm. I blinked, my anger faltering. Claire had mentioned her job at Ethan's firm, but I'd never connected the dots. She worked on contracts, not audits. Why you? You're not an accountant. Because I have access to legal records, she said. Contracts, client agreements, stuff Ethan couldn't see without raising flags. I found things, documents. That didn't add up, signatures that looked forged. We realized it wasn't just sloppy bookkeeping, it was deliberate. Someone at the firm is funneling money, and it's big. Millions. My mind raced, piecing it together. Ethan's story about irregularities wasn't a lie, but he'd left out Claire. So you and Ethan hired Landry together? She hesitated, then nodded. Yeah. Ethan wanted someone outside the firm, someone who could trace the money without tipping anyone off. I recommended Landry. I'd worked with him on a case last year. He's good, but he's intense. That's why I was at the Anchor. I was checking in, making sure Ethan was okay. This isn't just about the firm anymore. It's dangerous. Dangerous how? I pressed, my stomach twisting. Who's involved? I don't know, she admitted. That's what Landry's trying to find out. But the accounts are tied to some heavy hitters, clients with connections. If they find out we're digging, it could get ugly. Ethan didn't want you involved because he's terrified of you or the kids getting caught in the crossfire. I stared at her, the ducks gliding across the pond suddenly too serene for this conversation. Claire's story matched Ethan's, but it raised more questions. Why hadn't he told me about her? Why was she watching from a distance instead of joining? Them? You could have told me, I said, my voice breaking. You're my best friend. You let me think Ethan was cheating, let me spiral when you knew what was going on. I wanted to, she said, tears welling in her eyes. But Ethan made me promise. He said if you knew, you'd dig in and that's not safe. I've been pulling away because I couldn't lie to your face. I'm sorry. Her apology hung between us, heavy but not enough. I wanted to believe her, but the photo, the note, the secrets, they all screamed there was more. Who sent me this? I asked, holding up the note. Someone knew you were there, Claire. Someone's watching you and Ethan. Her eyes widened, fear flickering across her face. I don't know, she whispered. But if someone's sending you photos, they're sending a message. They want you to know we're involved. And that's not good. I stood, my purse clutched tight, the Santorini itinerary inside a painful reminder of what I'd lost. I need to talk to Ethan, I said. And you're coming with me. No more secrets. Claire nodded, wiping her eyes. Okay, but be careful. Whoever's behind this, they're not playing games. As we walked to my car, the note's words echoed in my head. Ask her why she's involved. I had, but I still didn't have the whole truth. And I was starting to think Claire didn't either. I drove home with Claire in the passenger seat, the silence between us thick with unspoken questions. The park's tranquility felt like a distant memory, replaced by the weight of her confession and the photo that had shattered my trust in her. Ethan's car was in the driveway when we pulled up, and my stomach knotted at the thought of facing him with Claire at my side. The Santorini itinerary, still crumpled in my purse, was a ghost of the life I'd planned, now buried under layers of deceit. Inside, Ethan was in the living room, sorting through a stack of mail. He looked up, his smile fading when he saw Claire behind me. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice cautious, eyes darting between us. "Sit down," I said, my tone leaving no room for argument. I dropped my purse on the coffee table, the photo and note spilling out. "Claire told me everything. The firm, the accounts, your little secret investigation. Why didn't you tell me she was involved?" His face paled, and he sank onto the couch, rubbing his temples. "I wanted to," he said, "but it was safer if you didn't know. Claire's in legal. She's exposed if this blows up. I thought keeping you out of it would protect you both." "Protect me?" I snapped, tossing the photo in front of him. "Someone sent me this, Ethan. They knew Claire was at the Anchor, watching you and Landry. They're watching us. How is that protecting me?" He stared at the photo, his jaw tightening. "Where did you get this?" "Mailbox. Hand delivered. With this." I slid the note across the table. "Ask her why she's involved." "Someone wants me to know what you're doing. Care to guess who?" Claire, standing by the doorway, spoke up, her voice shaky. "It's got to be someone at the firm. They must have seen me poking around the legal files or noticed Landry's inquiries. Ethan, I told you we were moving too fast." "We didn't have a choice," he shot back, his voice rising. "If we sat on this, the money would have disappeared, and we'd have nothing. You saw the accounts, millions, Claire. This isn't small time." "Enough," I said, cutting them off. "I want the truth, all of it. Who's behind the accounts, and who sent this?" Ethan exhaled, leaning forward, his hands clasped. "We don't know for sure. Landry's traced the money to a network of shell companies, but the trail's murky. The senior partner, Richard Harrington, is involved, I'm almost certain. He's been dodging audits, pushing shady deals. But we need proof before we can go to the authorities." Claire nodded. "That's why I was at the Anchor. Landry found a lead, a former employee who might talk. I was there to make sure Ethan didn't get in over his head." "A whistleblower?" I asked, my mind racing. "Who?" "We don't know their name," Ethan said. "Landry's meeting them tomorrow. It's why he gave me that report, to prep for what they might say." I stared at them, the pieces clicking but not fully connecting. Harrington, the money, a whistleblower. It was a lot, but it didn't explain the photo, or why someone targeted me. "You're both leaving something out," I said, my voice low. "If this is just about the firm, why send me this? Why drag me into it?" Before they could answer, my phone buzzed on the table. Another text from an unknown number. My heart stopped as I opened it. "Meet me at the old warehouse on Pier 12, 9 p.m. Come alone." I sent the photo. "I can help." Claire leaned over, reading it. "Don't go," she said, her voice urgent. "It's a trap. Whoever this is, they're playing you." Ethan grabbed the phone, his face grim. "She's right. This is too risky. Let Landry handle it." "No," I said, snatching it. "Beck, you two have been handling things and look where it's gotten us. Someone's watching our family and I'm done sitting on the sidelines. I'm going." "You can't," Ethan said, standing. "If Harrington's people are onto us, they could hurt you. Think about the kids." "I am thinking about them," I shot back. "That's why I'm doing this. You want proof? I'll get it." I grabbed my purse, the photo and note inside, and headed for the door. Claire called after me. "At least tell us what you find, please." I didn't answer. The warehouse on Pier 12 was a rundown spot by the river, abandoned since the factories closed. I'd driven past it 100 times, never imagining I'd walk into it alone. But the note's sender knew something, and I was tired of half-truths. Santorini was a distant dream now, replaced by a colder reality. Whoever was waiting at that warehouse, they'd better have answers, or I'd make them regret dragging me into this. The warehouse on Pier 12 loomed like a forgotten giant, its rusted walls swallowed by the river's damp breath. I parked a block away, the night pressing against my car windows, and checked my phone. 8:55 p.m. The text, "Meet me at the old warehouse." Come alone. I sent the photo, burned in my mind. Ethan and Claire had begged me not to go, but I was done letting them steer this ship. Someone knew the truth about the firm, about Claire, about Ethan's lies, and I was getting it tonight, no matter the cost. I slipped the photo and note into my jacket, the Santorini itinerary left behind in my purse. That dream was dead, replaced by this cold reality. My sneakers crunched on gravel as I approached the warehouse, its broken windows like empty eyes. The air smelled of oil and decay, the river's hum the only sound besides my pulse. A side door hung ajar, a sliver of light spilling out. I hesitated, my hand on my phone, ready to call Ethan if this went south. But I'd come too far to turn back. Inside, the warehouse was a maze of crates and shadows, lit by a single flickering bulb. Footsteps echoed ahead, and I followed, my breath shallow. "Hello?" I called, my voice sharper than I felt. "You sent the text." "I'm here." A figure stepped into the light, and I froze. It was Sarah, Ethan's boss's assistant at Harrington and Cole. I'd met her at firm dinners, quiet, mousy, always scribbling notes for Richard Harrington. Her glasses glinted, her coat too thin for the chill. "You came," she said, her voice low, nervous. "I wasn't sure you would." "You sent the photo?" I asked, stepping closer, my hands clenched. "The note about Claire? Why?" She glanced behind her, like the shadows might bite. "I had to. You needed to know what's happening. Ethan and Claire, they're in over their heads. Harrington's not just skimming accounts. He's laundering money for some bad people. Cartel-level bad. I've seen the files." My stomach dropped. Cartel? This was beyond fraud. "Why tell me? Why not go to the police?" "Because I can't," she said, her voice cracking. "Harrington's got eyes everywhere. I tried to leave the firm last year and suddenly my car was vandalized. My apartment broken into. Subtle warnings. I'm only talking now because Ethan's stirring things up and it's going to get us all killed." I stared at her, the bulb's flicker casting her face in jagged light. "You're the whistleblower, the one Landry's meeting tomorrow." She nodded, hugging herself. "I contacted Landry a month ago, fed him what I could, but Harrington's on to me. He saw me talking to Ethan last week, asked what we were discussing. I lied, but he didn't buy it. Then I saw Claire snooping in legal files. They're closing in, and I'm scared." "Why the photo?" I pressed. "Why drag me into this?" "Because you're Ethan's weak spot," she said, her eyes meeting mine. "Harrington knows Ethan's digging. If they can't stop him directly, they'll go through you. The photo was a warning. To me, to Ethan, to Claire. I sent it to you because you deserve to know what he's risking. Your family's not safe." My knees weakened, but I held her gaze. "What do they want? To scare us off?" "More than that," she said. "Harrington's moving the money soon, cleaning it through a new shell company. If Ethan and Landry get proof before then, it's over for him. But if they don't, he'll make sure no one talks, ever." A noise, a crate shifting, made us both jump. Sarah grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. "We need to go, now. They could be watching." I pulled free, my mind racing. "Give me something concrete. Names, accounts, anything I can take to Landry." She fumbled in her coat, pulling out a USB drive. "Transaction records, dates, amounts, companies. It's not everything, but it's enough to start. Landry will know what to do." She pressed it into my hand, her fingers trembling. "Don't trust anyone at the firm, not even Claire." "Claire?" I frowned. "She's helping Ethan." "Is she?" Sarah's voice dropped. "She's been meeting with Harrington privately. I don't know why, but it's not good. Be careful." Before I could respond, another noise, footsteps, deliberate, came from the darkness. Sarah bolted, vanishing between crates. I shoved. the USB into my pocket and ran for the door, my heart pounding. Outside, the river's hum swallowed my footsteps as I sprinted to my car. I locked the doors, gasping, and checked the rearview mirror. No one followed, but Sarah's words echoed, "Your family's not safe." I drove home, the USB a lead weight in my pocket. Sarah was the whistleblower, but she was scared, and Claire might be playing both sides. Ethan had no idea how deep this went. I needed to warn him, but first, I needed to know what was on that drive. The truth was closer, but so was the danger. I sat at my dining table at midnight, the house silent except for the hum of my laptop. Ethan was asleep upstairs, oblivious to my warehouse meeting with Sarah. The USB drive she'd given me glowed faintly in the port, its files open, spreadsheets of transactions, shell company names, and dates stretching back 5 years. Millions laundered through Harrington and Cole, just as she'd said. But one name in the record stopped me cold. Meridian Holdings, my father's old company, sold a decade ago after he retired. Why was it here, tied to Harrington's scheme? I leaned back, my hands shaking. Dad had run Meridian, a small logistics firm, until health issues forced him to sell. He'd always been straight-laced, grumbling about shady competitors. The sale had funded his retirement, my parents' cozy life. There was no way he'd been involved in laundering. But Meridian's name in these files wasn't a coincidence. I needed answers, and I wasn't waiting for Ethan or Claire to feed me more half-truths. I closed the laptop, the USB tucked into my pocket next to Sarah's note. The Santorini itinerary sat on the table, its glossy pages a cruel reminder of what I'd lost. I'd planned that trip to celebrate us, but now Ethan's lies, his secrecy about the firm's fraud, Claire's involvement, and now Meridian tied to it all. Claire's meetings with Harrington, Sarah's warning that Claire might be playing both sides, Harrington's reach, cartel connections, threats, and a plan to move the money soon. I couldn't trust Ethan or Claire fully, not until I understood Meridian's role. I grabbed my phone and texted my dad. "Can we talk tomorrow? Need to ask about Meridian." He'd be up early, probably gardening. I'd drive to their place, get the truth about his old company. But first, I needed to protect the USB's data. Copied the files to a cloud drive, password protected, and hid the USB in a drawer. If Harrington's people were watching, I wasn't taking chances. Sarah's fear, her vandalized car, her broken apartment, felt too real. I checked the locks, the windows, my nerves frayed. The house, once my sanctuary, felt like a trap. Morning came too fast. Ethan woke early, making coffee, his smile tentative. "You okay?" he asked, pouring me a cup. "You were up late." "Couldn't sleep," I said, sipping the coffee, my stomach churning. I didn't mention the warehouse or Meridian, not yet. "I'm heading to Mom and Dad's today. Kids are there, and I miss them." He nodded, oblivious. "Sounds good. Tell them hi. I'll be at the office catching up." His lie stung. He was meeting Landry about the whistleblower, but I let it slide. I needed space to think. I drove to my parents' house, an hour away, the USB's weight in my pocket. The kids were at a park with Mom, so Dad and I sat in his study, surrounded by his old sailing trophies. He looked older, his hair thinner, but his eyes were sharp. "What's this about Meridian?" he asked, leaning back in his chair. I took a breath, choosing my words. "I came across some records. Meridian's name popped up in a financial investigation. Offshore accounts, shell companies. It doesn't make sense. You sold it years ago. Any idea why it's involved?" His face tightened, a flicker of something, guilt? Fear? Crossing his eyes. "Meridian's been gone a decade," he said, his voice steady but too careful. "I sold it to a group out of Chicago. Clean deal. No loose ends." "Who bought it?" I pressed. "Those records suggest Meridian's still active." Tied to some shady deals. Millions, Dad. Laundering. He stood, pacing to the window, his hands clasped behind him. You shouldn't be digging into this, he said, his tone sharp. Meridian's done. Whoever's using the name, it's not my company. Let it go. Dad, I can't, I said, standing too. Ethan's caught up in this. His firm's laundering money, and Meridian's name is in the files. If you know something, tell me. Please. He turned, his face pale. The buyers. They weren't what they seemed. After the sale, I heard rumors. Shady investors, maybe tied to organized crime. I didn't dig deeper. I was out, retired. But if Meridian's name is being used, it's them, not me. My heart sank. Organized crime. Harrington's cartel connections. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my voice breaking. This is my family, Dad. Ethan's in danger. I'm in danger. I didn't know, he said, his voice cracking. I thought it was over. If I'd known it'd touch you. He trailed off, tears in his eyes. What can I do? Names, I said, my voice hard. Who bought Meridian? Who's behind this? He hesitated, then scribbled a name on a notepad. Vantage Group. That's all I know. Be careful, sweetheart. These people don't play games. I left his study, the notepad in my hand, Vantage Group burning in my mind. Ethan's firm, Claire's secrecy, my father's past. It was all connected. I drove home, the USB and Santorini itinerary in my purse, a map of a life unraveling. Vantage Group was my next target, but Harrington's shadow loomed larger. I wasn't just fighting for my marriage anymore. I was fighting for my family's survival. I stood outside Lucas Landry's office at dawn, the USB drive from Sarah burning in my pocket. The Vantage Group, Harrington's cartel-backed financiers, had bought my father's company, Meridian, a decade ago, and now their dirty money flowed through Ethan's firm. My marriage, my family, my past, everything was tangled in their web. I'd driven straight here after leaving Dad's, the Santorini itinerary still in my purse, a faded promise I wasn't sure I'd ever reclaim. Landry was my last hope to unravel this before Harrington silenced us all. The office was a cramped space above a diner, smelling of coffee and old paper. Landry sat behind a cluttered desk, his beard grayer than at the anchor, his eyes sharp as he took the USB. Sarah gave you this? He asked, plugging it into his laptop. Risky move. She's been dodging me since last night. She's scared, I said, sitting across from him, my hands clasped to stop their trembling. Said Harrington's tied to a cartel. Vantage Group's backing him. They bought my dad's company, Meridian. I need to know how it connects, and what Ethan's not telling me. Landry's fingers paused on the keyboard, his gaze flicking to mine. Meridian's in the files. Shell company now. Used to clean Vantage's cash. Your dad sold to them in 2015, clean on paper, but they kept the name for cover. Ethan didn't know until I traced it last week. That's why he's been so cagey. He found out it ties to you. My chest tightened. Ethan knew? Why hide it? I asked, my voice shaking. He said he was protecting me, but this is my family, my dad. Protection's his excuse, Landry said, leaning back. But he's in deep. Harrington's been threatening your family, subtle, like with Sarah's break-ins. Ethan hired me to get proof before Vantage could act. This USB's got enough. Transactions, names, dates. Harrington's done, but Ethan's exposed. He's been feeding me intel, knowing it could cost him his job, maybe more. I stared at the desk, the weight of Ethan's silence crushing me. He'd lied to shield me, but it felt like betrayal all the same. What about Claire? I asked. Sarah said she's meeting Harrington. Is she playing us? Landry shook his head. Claire's clean, far as I can tell. Her meetings were to stall Harrington, buying time while I dug. She's loyal to Ethan, maybe too loyal. Didn't tell you because he swore her to secrecy. Bad call, but not betrayal. Relief mixed with anger. Claire should have trusted me. But she wasn't the enemy. Harrington was. What now? I asked. Can you take him down with this? Already on it, Landry said, ejecting the USB. I've got a contact at the FBI. Been building a case. This seals it. Harrington, Vantage, the cartel link. But we move fast, or they'll bolt. Ethan's meeting me at noon to hand over his own evidence. You want in? I nodded, my resolve hardening. I'm done being the last to know. Let's end this. By noon, I was in a downtown cafe, the USB back in my pocket, Landry at a corner table with Ethan. My husband looked exhausted, his eyes hollow as he slid a folder to Landry. Bank records, he said, his voice low. Harrington's signatures. It's everything. I stepped forward, my shadow falling over the table. Ethan's head snapped up, his face paling. What are you doing here? He asked, his voice tight. Finishing what you started, I said, sitting down, the USB in my hand. Sarah gave me this. Vantage Group, Meridian, the cartel. It's all here. You should have told me about my dad. He flinched, his hands gripping the folder. I wanted to. When Landry traced Meridian, I panicked. Vantage threatened your parents if I talked. Said they'd dig up dirt from the sale, pin it on your dad. I thought if I handled it quietly, you'd be safe. Safe? I laughed, bitter. They sent me a photo, Ethan. They're watching us. You made me think you were cheating, let me spiral, all to play hero. I wasn't playing, he said, his voice breaking. I was terrified. For you, the kids, your parents. I thought I could fix it before it touched you. Landry cut in, his tone brisk. Save the marriage counseling. FBI's moving tonight. Harrington's at his office, oblivious. They'll raid based on this. He held up the USB and Ethan's folder. But Ethan, you're not clear. You access those accounts. They'll question you, maybe charge you. Ethan nodded, his jaw tight. I know. If it stops Harrington, it's worth it. My heart twisted. Ethan had risked everything, his job, his freedom to protect us, but his secrecy had nearly destroyed me. I reached for his hand, my touch hesitant. You should have trusted me, I said, tears stinging. We could have faced this together. I know, he whispered, squeezing my hand. I'm sorry. That night, I watched from my car as FBI agents swarmed Harrington and Cole's office, their lights flashing in the dusk. Landry's contact had moved fast, arresting Harrington and 2 Vantage Group operatives. Sarah's files, Ethan's records, and Landry's work had dismantled their scheme. Claire called, her voice shaky but relieved. She'd been cleared. Her meetings with Harrington just a desperate ploy to keep him off balance. Ethan was questioned, released on bail, but charges loomed. He'd broken laws to get evidence, a choice, that saved us but cost him. We sat in our kitchen at midnight, the Santorini itinerary between us, its pages worn. I wanted to give you that trip, I said, my voice soft. A perfect week, just us. We'll get there, he said, his eyes meeting mine. Not Santorini, maybe, but somewhere, if you still want me. I didn't answer, not yet. Truth had saved us, but it had broken something too. Meridian's shadow, Vantage's threats, Ethan's sacrifice. They'd changed us. I kept the itinerary, a reminder of what we'd fight for. Our family was safe, Harrington was gone, but the cost was ours to carry. And as dawn broke, I knew we'd face it together, one painful step at a time.